ist das hoch? Das ist aber hoch hier. Which questions is that?
The question about youth somewhere that you specified to me.
Yeah, just a moment. I have here your questions.
On right away.
Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the German Africa Foundation, I do welcome you all to this, I would say, extraordinary event on the eve of the third Independence Day of South Sudan, which we have given a very, very interesting title: South Sudan Inside, Out, Rebooting the Peace, #Defy Hate Now. Special thanks go to those partners of the German Africa Foundation. That's the Agency for Open Culture and Critical Transformation. That's the Media and Cooperation and Transition, and especially thanks also to the Humboldt-Universität, to the Protestant Church in Germany, EKD, but also personal, very special thanks to Baruch Gottlieb and Dimitri Kleiner for their wonderful technical assistance. Thank you. We will, of course, have a brief update tonight, first on the situation of South Sudan, but we'll focus on the role of the international diaspora plays in the either fueling the conflict or re-establishing peace. Is there an increasingly globally manipulated conflict, waged in part by the ubiquity of social media? This and many more issues will be raised tonight. I said it's an extraordinary meeting tonight, in that sense, as tonight there will be a live stream provided worldwide, and we are already on live stream. So worldwide we can see tonight and heard tonight, and we greet also all those wherever they are from this pulpit and from this stair here tonight. This means, as I said, our event will be broadcasted by video, so that now live outside of this room, many participate already via live stream. All those who are outside of this room will, of course, also be included in our discussions later on. There are technical provisions made, so this is going to be a very interesting experience. For the live stream also is our man tonight, and the Twitter issues is Ben McKenna. Thank you, Ben, also for being so-called the advocate of all those outside of the room. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do have the great honor to welcome Mr. Christoph Strässer. He is the German Federal Government Commissioner for Human Rights Policy and Humanitarian Aid. But also I do welcome him as the Vice President of the German Africa Foundation, which is the one who is responsible for this tonight. After his keynote speech, I have the honor to introduce to you all the panelists, whom I already extend a warm welcome. Mrs. Strässer, it's an honor to having you here tonight, and the floor is yours now. Welcome. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Faigle, dear colleagues from the German Africa Foundation, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I thank you all very much for the opportunity to make this event here tonight with this very, very technical input. You see the color of my hair. I'm not sure if it will happen as you try to do, because if I myself start with such technical support, I will always fail. But I hope the people you are reaching in all over the world will find that it will go. And I say it because I think it's very important for us, for the politics, for diplomacy, for human rights aspects, for humanitarian assistance, that we find new ways for our politics to transport it, that we find new means to say what we can do, and that we can discuss not only in such a room as this year at the Humboldt-Universität. And I think we need a new discourse on all the questions we have on the topic and on the agenda tonight. And when I say we need new ways and new kinds of discourse, I say it is to answer old questions. The questions didn't change in the last years, and therefore I must say all we did, many of us in special and different positions, I think most of them will say, I say it a little bit reluctant, the politics, also the international community started, especially in the region of Sudan and southern Sudan. It was not at the end successful up to this day. And therefore, I think we have to find some ways first of all, to make a little discourse in the past, in the debates we had on the last 50 years, 60 years, beginning from the independence of Sudan, and especially we could discuss about the situation in front of the independence and what was going on in the region, in the country, during the period up to 2005, up to the end of the debates and the comprehensive peace agreement that was, with the support of the international community, in 2005 at least finished. And on this CPA, I think there is the first question we have to ask. And many of us who were engaged in the development of Sudan and southern Sudan said it was a very, very great step towards a new order on the African continent, to find a new way of talking after a long-lasting civil war, and many had a lot of hopes what should go on. And I think the first question that was not my question. I was brought on it from a lot of debates in the last weeks after that what happened in December 2013. The first question was it really a comprehensive peace agreement? Was it comprehensive, and comprehensive not only because of the topics that were regulated in the treaty, but also comprehensive about the persons who took part in this debate, in this final decision, in the CPA. And this is what there are many doubts, many questions of all who are engaged in this process and who saw that, I think we must say it's just short before failing in the process we see today. And these peace negotiations on this long period showed that there must be at last two points and two ways. The one is the taking part of the civil society in the countries, and the second is the support of the international community. We have, Mr. Faigle told, we have in these days the third anniversary of the successful referendum in southern Sudan and the third anniversary of the independence of the country. And I know, because I was during the last 12 years very, very much engaged and saw every development, every movement with big eyes, and we were, many of us here also in Germany, in the European Union, had a lot of hope, a big, big hope that there could be a chance to start a new experiment, to find a new way of debating, of finding a new society in this African country. And I think there were a lot of of questions we have to answer now if we had the correct instruments, we from the Western countries, and especially the ongoing process in Africa, especially what I say about the role of the United Nations in this context. I've been last time in Juba in the first days of May in this year, and I must say, though I believed I had seen a lot of bad situations all over the world, I was really shocked about the pictures that were shown us, especially about what happened in Bentiu. We saw the pictures from a video camera, and yes, there was a reaction from my side that was a very, very quick reaction. It was especially directed to the way and to the role United Nations have to play in this ground, and we had a lot of ongoing discussions about the role of UNMISS, protection of civilians, something like this. But I think for me and for us, the most important question just now is how can we stop this war? How can we stop this crisis that is starting, and how can we work that the humanitarian catastrophe will not take place? And this is, I think, for us just now the deciding question, and I must say I'm not very hopeful about that, what will happen up to September, and I'm afraid the world will look to another humanitarian catastrophe, and everybody says we have known what had happened and we could have done anything to stop it. But as I just must say now, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the panelists will say other things, that we will have that we will wake up in September and we have to see a big catastrophe. What can be done? We have the official peace negotiations in Addis Ababa. We have, all what I know and what I see is that they are not going on in the way we hoped. And what I'm afraid, and this is part of our debate, and this is why I'm very happy that we can make such an event as today in these rooms. The German, biggest part of the European media are not more reporting about the developments in this process in Southern Sudan. And this is what I feel is one of the shames we have to live with, and therefore it's good that we can transport this dialogue today, this debate, over the borders, and we should make more pressure to the German media that they look at the situation, and not only to look at some dates when there is a big catastrophe, when there are hundreds of people killed. And I think it is for us, for German politics, for the EU politics, such very important topic that we have not only some parts to look at, but we have to look at the development in general. And the deciding question for me and for us and for you is, if we make a speculation to the future, what could happen, what should happen. And one time I imagine the peace negotiations in Addis Ababa, with all the support from IGAD, from African Union, from other partners, are successful. There will be a peace treaty between the groups. Will it bring the peace for the region, a sustainable peace? And after all experiences, I'm not sure if it's so. If the people who are negotiating, if they can reach a sustainable peace for everybody in the country. And I always remember some debates about the peace process, about the negotiations that have been taking part and take part, I think, ongoing, for example, in and for Darfur. I do not know how many peace treaties have been signed, and none of them had a sustainable point of view for the people in the region. And this is what what our proposals should be to be discussed. What is the key for a sustainable peace development in Sudan? And therefore, I say, for me, it's 2 points. The first point is the official negotiations in Addis, support by the international community, and especially a sustainable and ongoing ceasefire for the whole region. I think this is one of the first topics we have to demand. And the second, especially also for me and for what I have to do now, is the question of humanitarian access to all regions that are necessary, that the catastrophe we see of hunger, of no access to water, of health and others, that they are realized for the people in the region. This is the one point. The second point, and this I think is maybe the new way that is started with this debate here, I feel and I think that in this context there has to start, I call it an inclusive process of discussion, not only on the level of the groups, of the leaders of the groups, but this discussion, this process must include all parts of the society of Southern Sudan. Especially, I say it very, very clearly, the women must get a bigger influence to what is going on. They have suffered in the last decades under this war, and they have the burden, and they know about what they are talking if they say we need peace, we need schools, we need hospitals, and something like this. And the second point, I just read it in a release of the German radio station Deutsche Welle. There was a little article about the role of the churches in Southern Sudan, and also in this point, I feel this groups of the society have to be involved in this process, and I think the churches could be a very, very important role in this kind for a peace process. And to support this, I think all efforts that can be done are important to support this process. And I think only if we get this inclusive process in the debate and in the negotiations, we'll be successful for the next decades. And this is why I enjoy very, very much to be here, and I sit down on my chair and I will listen, because this is also a point of our debate, that not only German politicians speak on the panel, but also colleagues from Southern Sudan. I thank you very much that you take the effort to come here, and once again, I hope we get a good debate and good results also for the development in your country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Strässer. You are not only involved in Africa since you have taken up your new position, but I very well remember your huge engagement for the entire continent of Africa for many years in your time as Member of Parliament of the German Bundestag, but also especially for South Sudan and Sudan. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure to introduce my panelists here. To my immediate right, I welcome Mrs. Achwil Kuol. Mrs. Kuol is the first secretary and the charge d'affaires of the Embassy of South Sudan here in Berlin. Welcome. To her right, I welcome Mrs. Sieta Majok. Sieta is the co-founder of Talk of Juba. I'm sure she will explain this to us later. She comes from Birmingham, at the moment from Birmingham. And I think she is the only good expert here on this panel when it comes to Twitter and to hashtag and to social media. So she is our expert on that. I also need some education on this. On my very left here is Mrs. Marina Peter from the Sudan Forum and the Ecumenical Network Sudan and South Sudan, well known in all the South Sudan and Sudan circles. And sometimes people say Grand Dame of South Sudan and Sudan. To my immediate left here is Professor Dr. Leben Moro. As Mr. Strässer said, just flying in from Juba. He is the Director of External Relations, Director in the University of Juba, and he teaches graduate courses in the field of development, conflict, forced migration, and humanitarian affairs. So these are the panelists, and I'm your moderator. I'm Volker Faigle, the Special Envoy of the Protestant Church in Germany, EKD, to Sudan and South Sudan. Charge d'affaires, Mrs. Kuol. At the eve of the third day of independence, our first and foremost thought should go to South Sudan, to extend our well wishes and our hope, so that the ceasefire will be maintained, so that the process of reconciliation will speed up, and our well wishes for sustainable peace in South Sudan. This I wanted to express as the very first comment. Because we are still, and we are full of hope. And this evening also is part of so many powers around the globe, so that these hopes all will hold true in South Sudan. We just have heard of Mr. Strässer's view as one who is outside of Sudan. So we will have tonight also outside of Sudan perspectives and inside of Sudan perspectives. Now let's first go inside of the Sudan. And how would you, Mrs. Kuol, how would you, from your point of view, describe the present situation now as an insider? And perhaps, Leben, you also could add on this, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests, let me extend my gratitude and all thanks to the organizers of this event on the eve of the independence of South Sudan, which we are not proud to celebrate this year. And especially Mr. Faigle, who is the moderator of this panelist. There is not much to say about what is going on. All of you, I think you are updated on the online news or what is going on the negotiation on Addis Ababa. I think last month, on 20th of June, IGAD presented a press release indicated the details of the launch of multi-stakeholders negotiation talks for South Sudan to be conducted in participatory roundtable format in accordance with the 9th May, the agreement that was signed on May, to resolve the crisis in South Sudan. But the talks were expected to finalize the modalities for the implementation for the cessation of hostilities agreement and to discuss the government or the governance agenda and arrangement for the transitional government of national unity as it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, the rebels boycott that talks, and the whole what I received from my government is that they have the will to continue to establish, because there is no other way for South Sudan to reach peace and to reconcile and to overcome what happens just only through talks and peace. So the government is committed for that. Also, the government is prepared for the next phase of negotiation in order to meet the deadlines enclosed by the IGAD to complete the dialogue on the formation of the transitional government of national unity within the 60 days. That was the 9th of May. And that's why we need observers on the ground, especially from Yemen. That is our request, to be there on the ground, to be the witness and to observe what is going on, what is happening, who is not committed to implement the peace agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kuol. Dr. Leben, you just came from Juba. What are your explanations of the situation? And first of all, also I would also know what chances do you give the ceasefire? What do you see as chances? Does it hold, or is it very fragile?
I'm very happy to be here. I came on Saturday, and actually when you're from South Sudan, you're coming here, you have to be committed because you have to travel to neighboring countries, and also the people inviting you have to be committed. So I really thank Stephen and then Stephanie. As she mentioned, the peace talks are being mediated by the IGAD, which is the regional body, but then the peace talks are not ongoing now. So the peace talks are not ongoing because of, well, some disagreements and so on. So they are not ongoing, and we hope that they can reconvene very quickly. We also hear there's a ceasefire in place, but we hear complaints about violations here and there. But I can say that in Juba, I'm based in Juba, the situation is calm. The university where I work is open, it's operating, so it's generally normal. Some of my students, unfortunately, are coming from the UN base, the IDPs within Juba. That, of course, tells a lot that the situation is not very normal for everybody. And also the other issue is the issue of humanitarian situation, the issue of recently there were reports, there was an appeal by the humanitarian community for something like $1 billion because of the people who are displaced from their homes, so they're in a dire situation and they need assistance. So the humanitarian situation is not very good. And also one good indicator is that Juba actually had cholera, and cholera was really, even we were really very afraid when you develop a bit of stomach problem, then people are, so that is an indication of the dire humanitarian situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Linden. You want to add something on that?
Yeah.
Please do so, of course.
I just wanted to make some comments of the speech of Mr. Strässer, that what he mentioned. Actually, I think all of us, the South Sudanese people, we are not proud of what happens. And the incident that started on the 15th of December doesn't shock the world, but even we shocked ourselves with the violation of killing innocent people, civilian, especially in Maracal and Bantu, what you witnessed there. And the thing is, we are full of hope that we will overcome this, because among us as tribes, we have 64 tribes in South Sudan. We speak more than 50-something local languages. And there is no hatred between the tribes. And that one you can see that because now many of the tribes, we have 7 states, they are in peace. Just only three states, they are in trouble. So those who flee from the 3 states, they are accommodated in other places, in like Arop state, Lake states, the Dinka places. But there's other Nuers there. I'm from far north borders with Sudan. I'm from Abyei. In north and south of Abyei, there's also Nuer people there. And we are Dinka. So there is no real hatred between the tribes themselves, because there is intercultural things, intermarriage. So this problem is only, I think, power struggle, which is really the truth. This is power struggle, and some individuals are ambitious. And because there is this too much literacy, high literacy in South Sudan, and you know the strong bond in Africa with the families and tribal things and the clients. So just people follow what your from our chief said or your father. They are just following without even investigating what is happening and what is really the problem. So this one, I think it will be, yes, it's a huge problem, and even the government now is, they admit that there is a problem of, let us say, corruption, weak institutions, and all these things. So we have to work on this, because when even the 6 years of the self-determination, they didn't work hard for really what is the system for South Sudanese to govern themselves. We just come along with the whole system from Sudan, and that's why all this problem started.
Thank you, Mrs. Kuol. And thank the both of you for giving us a brief introduction in the situation in South Sudan as people inside of Sudan, if I may say so. You said it's power struggle. Of course, one wonders, you know, how after all this time your people suffered in the north of Sudan, in Sudan, and they're now having independence, and now this power struggle comes to a terrible, terrible civil war where we have to mourn so many people. Perhaps, Marina, you are inside and outside of Sudan, very conversant. Could you add on this what we have heard a little bit?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Usually, later on we will talk about possible solutions, and I always used to say that for me the most important is that we listen to South Sudanese, to the people themselves, so I should not talk too much. Nevertheless, of course, I'm happy to answer your question, although I don't have an answer. We heard, is it power struggle? Definitely. In politics, there's always power struggle, no doubt. And I think Mr. Strässer and other people in the room, they know much better than myself what I'm talking about. But I think we fall short in understanding what is really going on. And if we don't understand what is really going on, we fall short in trying to contribute to the solution. So to me, it's much more than a power struggle. What we saw, 3 years ago, I was in Juba at the eve of independence. And although many people, of course, were happy, and we decided also to be happy on that day because all the South Sudanese were so happy. The day before and the day after, we already said, but there's a lot of problems, and we had fears, and I think the South Sudanese themselves know it very well with all the happiness. So we knew that in the very moment when this, let's say, what hold the South Sudanese together, first, this fight against the so-called Arabs, against Islamism, secondly, this hope to get to the referendum, to get to independence, as soon as this will not be there, what will make a South Sudanese a South Sudanese? So this question of identity, these questions of nation building was very, very evident. We knew that there was a society which had a complete, at least with the elites, complete militarized minds. We knew that South Sudan had more generals than the United States. We knew that we deal with a society which was deeply, deeply traumatized. And to me, this is the biggest tragedy of what is happening right now. We deal with traumatized people, and they are re-traumatized right now by what is going on. And to me, this is really the most challenging thing. But if it comes to, I was listening very carefully to what was said and also what you said, Mr. Strässer, and you were claiming that the media, the German media, should pay more attention. Yes, in one way, yes, they should. On the other hand, sometimes I'm wondering about this media, because media very often need simple explanations, simple solutions. And who defined this war as an ethnic war, which it is not? It has an ethnic component, but it's not an ethnic war, as most of us know. Media, for instance. Media at the same time, and this is the topic of this evening, and I really would like to come to that, what is the role of the new media, and what is the role of this social media, Twitter, and so on. Let me, if you allow me, give 2 examples. What I'm always observing, or have been observing, and I think a lot of us are suffering from, especially if it comes to South Sudan, is the rumor mongering. Not so, hate speech is something Sieta will talk about, but the rumor mongering. And let me give you one personal example. During the other war, one day I came to Rumbek, and somebody who I knew had been known for a long time, he came to me and said, "Marina, is it you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "But you are dead." Okay, not that I know of. But he said, "But I was told you collapsed in the church on that and that day, and you were brought to hospital, and on the way you passed away." And in a way, he insisted I must be dead because he was told I was dead. I'm saying that because this is what we observe very often. News are getting out, and especially with the new media, false news, very often false news, and they are very fast, widespread, and people act on this news. So we don't have this system of let us first see what is really true. That is one. The second is we just had a South Sudan conference, and one of the participants, he placed a photo on Twitter showing all the name tags, and the subtitle was, "All these people did not make it to Hermannsburg because all these name tags were there still." But the reason why the name tags were there was because people were afraid of the security in the room, so they did not want to show their names. And now with posting this photo, all the names were out. So every security agent in the world could have seen it. And I know I talk too much, but to me, these are two very important components. People are afraid. Security plays a big role. And what I find, and this is also why I find it interesting that we have this open discussion today, if you are not 100% with one side today, you are 100% against it. And this is a problem which we have to deal with when it comes to this media.
Thank you, Marina, and for your additional remarks on the current situation and also the explanation you have given. You mentioned also, and that's very true, the main focus tonight is also the role of the media, the new media, the social media. And you mentioned the rumors and the hate speeches and all those things. We come to this because I look now at Sieta. Sieta, you are also a South Sudanese, but you live outside and follow outside also the developments there very, very closely. In the field of social media, you are the co-founder of this Talk of Juba. What is this? And you are also very, very involved in this internet-based project against hate speech posting. Could you explain a little bit more about what you do there?
I'm co-founder of Talk of Juba, which is one of South Sudan's first entertainment and lifestyle websites. So we also provide a platform for youth, and we have very active following on Facebook and on Twitter. And we've been particularly focused the last 6 months on the current conflict, as well as trying to provide a platform for youth to show the world another side to South Sudan, as well as help promote peace in that aspect. Okay, here I'm going to be speaking mostly about hate speech on social media and, with regard to South Sudan, South Sudanese, and also the role of the diaspora. Okay, sorry. Okay, it's fine. Yes, please. Oh yes, and for anyone interested at home or here, please use the Defy Hate Now hashtag on Facebook and on Twitter, or go to facebook.com/Talk of Juba, and you can participate in the discussion as well. Next slide, please. So what is hate speech? It's pretty straightforward. Speech which attacks a person or a group on the basis of race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. There's heavy debate about whether hate speech is a form of freedom of speech. However, it is not a form of freedom of speech because it infringes people's dignity as well as equality. And specific form of hate speech, for example, incitement of genocide, is also against international law and human rights laws. So therefore, hate speech is not. It doesn't fall under the framework of freedom of speech. So over the past 6 months, I was in Juba in December from the 9th to the 27th, and I've been following the situation in South Sudan ever since then as well. And over the past 6 months, obviously me and a number of people have collected evidence of hate speech with regards to South Sudanese, which definitely amplified during this conflict. The main findings is found different dimensions of hate speech. So some hate speech was based on the context behind it, and some was strictly the content. So incitement such as kill them all, etc. So we'll show examples of context and content. We also found different types of hate speech, such as text-based and also visuals. We'll also show examples of that. We found that Facebook is the most popular medium for hate speech amongst South Sudanese, so we found most of it on Facebook. So specific findings from our research, this particular research, not necessarily representative of any other studies that might come across. We found incitement of hatred and genocide, pro-tribal statements, baseless accusations on death toll atrocities. For example, we found examples of people stating the death toll to Juba massacre was about 10,000, which is unconfirmed by official reports. This was used as a justification for reprisal attacks and continuous tribalism. We also found propaganda which was encouraging. So sorry, I forgot the third slide. Sorry, the previous, yeah, the findings. Slide 3. No. Oh my gosh. Okay, so sorry about this. Yes, it's that one. Thank you. Yeah, so we found propaganda encouraging divisions. So there's been a rise of propaganda sites, in particularly. Some of them are based in the diaspora, and some of them are actually run by people in the diaspora. And these propaganda sites have been encouraging further division in, between South Sudanese. We also found influential people citing hate speech on social media as well. And one of the main findings which ties this together with diaspora is that overwhelming amount of hate speech originates from the diaspora. So majority of it we seem to have found to be from people in the United States and also Australia, South Sudanese in the diaspora. Next slide, please. So now we're going to show a number of examples of some of our findings. Some of it might be very offensive as well and graphic. Well, this in particular, well, Right Army is the army of the SPLM in opposition. We don't know if this particular Facebook post is true or not, but it does suggest the possible role of diaspora in the conflict. It has also, we've also been told there's been fundraisings for pro-rebels and meetings as well with regards to that. Next slide, please. This one in particularly, the link is not linked to the actual post. This individual is trying to push the stereotype that Nuer are violent individuals, targeting Dinka and so forth. So this is a really often common form of hate speech that we found as well. Next slide, please. This one is really just encouraging the opposition to continue fighting. They also encouraged, you know, God will kill them all and so on. So we found this type of hate speech. Okay, next slide, please. These are the comment sections of someone's post. This person is the second person, and this one is supporting the, I suppose, opposition group or the opposition fighters, and then the post after that incites hatred, stating displace all Dinka. Next post, next slide, please. This one is saying Dinka's government never bring peace. So it also, I suppose, plays into this, pushes a stereotype of Dinka people that they always want to rule, or have control of everything, and in the end, Seskir has to go. Next slide, please. This one is also, this individual appears to be a supporter of the opposition, and this post in particularly demonstrates that there has also been a rift between Nuer people who support and who don't support the opposition as well. So this person is literally just a form of intertribalism as well. Next slide, please. This one is an old post from 2013. We use this because it also represents that there's also an issue of hate speech and tribalism in between sub-tribes. Next slide, please. This one is also very representative of like the previous post. A lot of people like to associate the president with the region he's from. So we also found there was a lot of outrage between some people of the same tribe as him about the war taking place in the Jonglei area, or why are they not attacking his region and so forth. So it's another form of tribalism and hate speech within a tribe but different regions. Next slide, please. This individual in particularly is, I suppose, wishing a horrible, undignified death and burial of any Dinka person who is supporting the opposition. Next slide, please. This image was pushed to be the supposed photographic image of the Juba massacre. Clearly, it is, if the image has circulated for quite some time, a lot of people would know that these images are not of the actual massacre. And also, you can tell from the different phenotype, the Nilotics are quite distinctive in features, so it's a different phenotype compared to these people. So that's also a way of recognizing that these images are just being used to push propaganda. This is an example of visual hate speech. Next slide, please. This slide is very interesting, and particularly towards, I suppose, the far right. You can see the bottom right, there's a black copyright sign and supposed AP logo. Obviously, that's not how AP does their watermarks on the pictures. And also, the copyright sign is right in front of it. So you can tell there's a lot of people who are really trying to push certain images and trying, in a sense, indirectly justify any reprisal attacks or continuous tribalism and hate speech. Next image, please. This image in particularly is of Boko Haram, perhaps in one of their attacks on churches. It's been circulating for quite some time, so when we did see this, it was with surprise. This person said, Dr. Riak is killing innocent South Sudanese Dinkas for his selfish interests. He will never believe this. I mean, clearly it's not anything to do with the current atrocities, and it's not even with relation to with South Sudan, because the type of crimes committed by Boko Haram is quite characteristic of their work. But this is also an example of the visual type of hate speech that we saw, that people are trying to push certain images to justify further hatred. Next slide, I think that's it. I hope that answers the questions.
Yes. Thank you, Sieta. This presentation brought to us our main concern, the role of the new media, especially from outside of the south of Sudan, which most of us are not aware that the impact of such hate speeches are fueling also this conflict. And that's our concern. But of course, not all people in the so-called diaspora are thinking like that. Just a brief information on when the diaspora is powerful, also in this conflict, to the good or to the worse.
What do we understand when we talk about the South Sudanese diaspora? Mrs. Kuol.
Thank you. First of all, for some people, they don't know who or what is the diaspora means. Diaspora is a South Sudanese group of exiles, refugees, and migrants, and other forms of South Sudanese population outside South Sudan. So those are diaspora. And this number has sharply increased since the beginning of the struggle for the independence in Sudan. Almost over 500,000 of South Sudanese have left the country as refugees, and either permanently or as a temporary workforce, leading to the establishment of the South Sudanese diaspora population. We have the largest community of the South Sudanese diaspora in North America and Western Europe, and United States, Canada, UK, France, Italy, Sweden, Australia, and New Zealand, and we have a few here in Germany. So the role of what the diaspora can play in this conflict in South Sudan. So diaspora can have a positive and a negative impact on South Sudan domestic politics. More positively, South Sudanese diaspora can make a powerful contribution to peace and reconciliation, to encourage South Sudanese people to come together, South Sudanese people inside to come together and support peace, to establish the free dialogue, because it is the time for healing instead of these horrible things. Because yes, in South Sudan there is this, the young people use for the Facebook, Twitter, and all these things, but it's not as the diaspora people, because they have the whole means for this. So they have to support peace instead of posting these things, finding some pictures from the genocide happens in Rwanda and Nigeria. Because yes, horrible things happened last December, but we cannot compare this to what happened in Rwanda. Forget about taking these pictures to do the hate speech, like what Sieta mentioned here on the Facebook. And some people, they are aware of these pictures, but this one just to fuel the conflict between Dinka and Nuer, make it like specific, but it's not exactly like that. And also, I think diaspora can positively give instead of this, because some of them, they secure the tangible and intangible resources to fuel the armed conflict and provide cloud institutional and networked structure that enable to transfer money and arms, because they used to do this before the independence. But now to do this, to destroy the country and the achievement of what we have been struggling for more than 20 years. Positively, diaspora can give also humanitarian assistance to victims of conflict, and they also support the post-war reconstruction efforts.
Thank you. I do hope, Sieta, you also will be able, in the course of the evening, to give us also positive news on the new media, because what we have read and seen was just horrible. Let me turn to Professor Leben. You are living in the south of Sudan. From your point of view, how do you see all this? And can the establishment of communication technology contribute to a sustainable mean to overcome the conflict? And what chances do you see in the establishment of such communication technology in South Sudan? What are the challenges? How do you see this field of communication, especially also among the youth?
Yeah, communication can play a positive role. What has happened is that the upsurge in fighting the violence, one of the consequences has been the sharpening or deepening of ethnic differences. And this is a fact. This is because of the violence. And what we need is to repair these ethnic relations. This is very important. And I think here communication can play a very important role. Communication can be a way of passing on messages, peace messages, for example. Recently, there are slogans such as "One People, One Nation." I think this is a good slogan. It's an attempt to say that we should move away. We should focus on our own tribes. We talk in Southern Sudan. We talk about tribes or ethnic groups. It's not good for our country. So we should move. We should be thinking more about our nation. So communication can be a good way of passing peace messages in a situation where we badly need peace. And also, it can be a way of passing accurate and factual information. I think as we heard that one of the problems is that rumors, the spreading of rumors, the spreading of information that in certain places, in certain times is completely inaccurate, is false. And this can have negative impact in a situation like our own, where there's tensions, political instability. So also communication, you can mobilize people to do good things. Say you can mobilize people for good causes. And what are the current challenges? Well, the current challenges, one of them is the environment, is that we came out of war which lasted for over 2 decades, and within a short time we also relapsed into war again. So in such a situation, it's extremely very difficult to develop this, to be able to put in place good channels of communication is a big problem. Secondly, also resources. Take, for example, we as a university, the shortage of money is a major problem. If we had the money, for example, we would be able to put in place a very good distance education. And you know, our university is the oldest and the largest, and we have over 10,000 students, and a lot of the students there, most of them are young people. So, and there could be a way of even reaching a wider audience when we have the distance education. But that means also that we should have very good communication technologies, channels, so that we can pass on the one. Another issue is also somebody talked about literacy. The literacy rates are very, very, very low, and that definitely is a problem. So we need, the more you educate people, the more you have a literate population, and it is done easier also to work. And in a situation like that, you can also promote an open and healthy debate. I hope I answered all.
You did well, Professor. I ask myself, also listening to you, my goodness, what is it now with all this social media? I think it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. And I think that's the dangerous thing about that. Sieta, I come back to you on this issue because you mentioned the overwhelming amount of hate speech originates from the diaspora, which is frightening. Now let's go to the south of Sudan, inside of Sudan, What can you tell us about your observations about the youth in South Sudan? Do they already use this instrument to make their voice heard in public in South Sudan?
Yes, I did find when I was there in Juba, there is a rise of 3G networks through MTN, Zain, etc. So there's a lot of youth in South Sudan who actually tweet and also use Facebook in particularly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sieta. I would like now to close this part of our introduction to the topic of this evening, because we want to engage in discussions as well. But I still have a question to you, Marina. Could you tell us whether you are conversant of the fact that the South Sudanese government uses this new media to inform the public about issues of security, of peace, of reconciliation? How do you observe this? Is the government using this media for the good in this situation, or good enough?
Definitely government is also using media. Let's say the media work of SPLM as such has never been extremely good, even in the past. So very often they did not use, let's say, the power they could have used. Whether they use it today for, let's say, you can always be a bit suspicious. Again, about the facts provided. So if a government of such nature provides information, and the same is true for the opposition, by the way, even more so, you have to see whether you have independent sources to verify. So I would not necessarily believe everything coming from the government, and let alone coming from the opposition forces. In terms of reconciliation, I think it's not using it as it could. And in terms of security, we have been wondering for a long time, what security concept does the government have? Is it security for themselves, first and foremost, or is it security for the people? And I think there is a big question mark. So I cannot clearly answer your question. But I feel there is a long way. So, but definitely government is using Twitter, government is using, of course, internet. But whether it's always only to the best, at least I would put a small question mark there.
Thank you, Marina, and thank all the panelists so far for this introduction on the impact of the new media, either to fuel the conflict or to contribute for the good. Now the floor is yours, dear audience, here in this room, but also wherever in the world you are with us. And therefore, I just also want then Ben to inform us whether you have any reaction from wherever. And also, you are all invited then to comment or to ask. The floor is yours. And please be aware that now, whenever you talk to us, you are in the video and you will be broadcasted worldwide. You should know that. So this needs also your consent. This gentleman on the very left first. Can you please tell us your name and perhaps where you come from, and also if you want to ask a specific panelist here, then also indicate this. Thank you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for being here, for those who've traveled longer, and thank you for organizing this event. My name is Philipp Strothmann. I get no real relationship with the Sudan except for being interested generally in foreign politics. My question, especially since we're talking about the use of social media, and now the topic came up in terms of it being used to sort of provide false information, because we've seen that in other conflicts as well, such as, for example, right now in the Ukraine. There was an initiative by civil society organizations to sort of set up a platform to verify information. So deliberately, much like what you just did, showing pictures that were used for a certain claim and showing where they actually came from to sort of balance the accounts and to provide proof as to that the claims made with these pictures were actually false. So my question in this case is whether you, in this case I'm asking Sieta, are doing something like that, whether you try to balance hate speech that is put out. And my second question was in terms of, because there was a comment on the general literacy, and I think you talked about, or one of you talked about the chiefs being the ones who sort of really provide opinion and lead opinion and thereby contribute maybe to a false flow of information. And my question really is, how much influence, how much impact do you think social media has right now in Sudan? Is that really a contributor to the conflict, or is that a little bit overplayed?
Thank you. I think this goes all to Sieta, if I understood correctly. I would like to collect another remark from this gentleman on the very left, and then we go into the first round. And I see Ben also has some news from wherever. Please.
Yes, dear panelists, dear world. My name is Tim Glavian. I'm from the German Institute of Global and Area Studies. Let me just take a very brief assessment, because I agree with Marina Peters on this, that my viewpoint isn't the most important. But I would say the renewal Big Ten 2.0, let's call it, approach of what we're doing right now in South Sudan, I mean all actors, I just fear there's not a high chance of success. It's a very high stakes power game, and it's a very dangerous game. But now this brings me to the question. I would say in South Sudan, media is much more opinionated. So even articles that I read usually are the opinion of the author rather than simple distribution of facts. So I would ask the panelists, and I'd especially like to ask the professor and maybe Marina Peters and the other two, you have insights on this as well, but what are the current discussions within media, within South Sudan, on what alternative approaches are to coming out of this conflict, and preferably not just the media centered in Juba, but also the media in the periphery. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we would like to listen to the world. Ben, what are the news?
I hate to say it after a few times, but it's Brett, actually. So let's make that clear. All right, so I had lots of comments. I asked some people in the on the Talk of Juba Facebook page exactly what their definition of hate speech was, and we received lots of varying comments ranging from just vulgar language to most of it being about an actual direct incitement to violence. So with both news media and new media being sort of, I guess the line is getting more and more blurred every day, where do we draw this line? And this is going to be an open question to the panel. Where do you draw the line between, let's say, hate speech and actual incitement to violence? And what do you recommend as Deng Mading suggests, what would you do with politicians or media that gives you this direct misinformation that leads to an incitement to violence?
Thank you, Ben. Now I turn to Sieta to answer the first questions.
Okay, the first question was, I think, how do we, I suppose, balance as well, because I only showed the negative side. I also have a positive part about media with regards to South Sudanese diaspora as well as South Sudan. If Stephen could please put on the PowerPoint slide. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Okay, the other side, so basically I'm just going to explain this. Since the conflict, there's been a lot of increase in a lot more positive talk as well as negative talk. So hashtag My Tribe is South Sudan. I'll explain this one in more detail. I Choose Peace campaign, what I love about South Sudan, as well as the Peace Radio, Sawa Shabab, and Messages of Peace. People, especially artists, South Sudanese music artists and youth, have been coming together, promoting peace through images or music or just videos discussing and urging and calling for peace. We've also found sharing of information of positive stories, encouraging unity. Oxfam has been doing a particularly good job at showing positive sides and trying to push positive stories as well, that we are trying to post on Talk of Juba as well. So the I Choose Peace campaign started in December. Talk of Juba helped with this campaign in particularly because people would take pictures and then they would write on the picture, they would have I Choose Peace. So we would promote and have that image on Talk of Juba and share it as well, working together with the person of I Choose Peace. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. My Tribe is South Sudan is also a news site that they managed. This hashtag had about 2,000 tweets in a very short amount of time as well. It's really to spread the message of reconciliation, unity in South Sudan, so people can submit positive images, music, articles, poetry with regards to peace. Next slide, please. Sawa Shabab is a weekly radio drama. It's broadcasted in English, Arabic, also Dinka and Rare languages. It is played on radios throughout in South Sudan. Radio Mariah particularly plays it. It promotes gender equity, national identity, and unity. So this is one way that the mainstream, the airwaves radio of South Sudan is trying their best to promote peace and unity as well. Next slide, please. This is things I love about South Sudan. BBC Trending did an article on things I love about South Sudan because in particularly this hashtag had about 2,000 tweets in a very short amount of time. It promotes the positive side of South Sudan and also promotes what South Sudan can become. Next slide, please. I particularly included this one. It's perhaps my favorite because it's the eve of independence. As Africa's youngest nation, we want peace, prosperity, despite the gloom predictions, and I think it's important to keep this in mind, despite it being the 3rd anniversary and the situation we're kind of in. It really does show that we can do better and we have to remain optimistic. So social media has balanced out the hate speech, and I know that there's currently some events going on as well to continue promoting peace. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, but I first would like to thank Sieta. She did it very smartly to answer your question and also turning into positive sides of this hashtag business. Thank you. Ms. Kuol, you want to add something on that?
Yeah, I just exactly wanted to say what you just said. I really respect and appreciate what she is doing. She is young, and despite what happened through her experience visiting South Sudan and through the media, she really proved that the social media can do a lot of positive things in this crisis, instead of hating speech and all these things. And one of the things, the pictures that she presented a couple of minutes ago, I came through this also through Facebook and all these things. And some people, they were really like keen to prove those people wrong. These pictures to go to the website and the link on, and which year was posted this. We don't need to kill each other to put these things on the website. And also I think we have a will as a South Sudanese people. All the opposition parties, they met with the president, because this problem now is not only the SPLM problem, it's the nation crisis, which we have to come together to solve this through dialogue by all means, either with the young like Sieta and those who are inside South Sudan and outside, to overcome this. So I think social media has the more positive impact instead than the negative one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kuol. Also to underline the positive aspect of the social media. This actually is a very good bridge to you when this gentleman on the very end asked you about literacy and how is the discussion within South Sudan on these issues, you know, to encourage, are people encouraged and are people engaging in this positive aspect of the social media? I think that was your question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think expectedly a lot of the discussions, I think, touch on the issues of war and peace, how to stop the war, and I'm really talking a lot about focusing more on the TV. We have the government TV, and we have a private TV channel, one I think, and then we have the radios. So the Miraya and others, some of them actually by the churches, and then we have the print media, the newspapers and so on. Then we have the internet discussion fora. So there's a lot of really discussions happen in all this, and as we also heard from her, then there's also the Facebooks and the what and so on. So I think probably this one happened a lot. I think maybe in the urban areas, maybe in Juba, because of the infrastructure. When you talk of the internet, for us even in the university, often I have to leave my office and run to the nearest internet cafe because of what. So of course the situation has improved a lot. In the past, actually, if you go outside Juba, then you have to carry a satellite phone, because that is the only way to communicate in the remote areas. But now then you see not many people are carrying. Maybe some people carry because it is fancy to carry. But then when you talk of the print media and so on, then this go far away, maybe to places outside Juba and so on. And the discussions really on the issue of how is the process, what is happening with the peace process, how should it be approached, who should be involved. Right? We had about questions about inclusive, who is to be included, who is what. So all this debated, and also issues of humanitarian access, like how people who are cut off in many places should be provided with assistance and so on. So all these discussions are there. I think the most interesting is that one prominent intellectual from my university wrote a very interesting article recently about, I think now that the peace process is not moving well enough, why don't we bring it back home, and then we try another approach of doing. That was very, 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 but it's from one person. So there's a lot of discussion, and I can say maybe in the past there was more space. Maybe now a little bit the space has become a little bit narrow because of the current situation, but still there's really good discussion, particularly the talk shows and so on. And a lot of the focus is on the issue of bringing the war to an end. How can that be achieved?
Thank you, Professor Leben. I also call to the world now. Are there any news from outside of this room? Ben?
Brett. All right. So we have a couple of questions here directed at Achwil, actually. They are asking whether or not the government of South Sudan is doing anything about some of the, let's say, unbiased reporting, or it's incitement to violence going on South Sudan television, and if there's anything that the government is taking steps towards to resolve that.
Mm-hmm. Who can answer that? Well, actually, only the South Sudanese.
Yeah, thank you. This is
Kuol.
a question for the government.
Yes.
Actually, unfortunately, I'm representative of the government here. But what I know so far, I remember in December, we received an order from the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs that we have to inform the South Sudanese diaspora about the fact of what is going on the ground. So instead of to be like some problem within the South Sudanese community outside. And we tried that. And I remember in Germany here, we went to Hamburg, Frankfurt, and to inform the South Sudanese community on what is going on and exactly what was happened, because at least those who are outside, they have the access for more information, and they don't take things blindly like people in the ground in South Sudan. And I remember those meetings were broadcasting, and it was televised in the South Sudan SSTV, South Sudan channel in South Sudan. And also I remember the prayers in the ground in South Sudan was also televised, and all of us there is really a lot of efforts through the government, and even the meeting with the president of the opposition parties when they initiate that they want to meet the president for all South Sudanese people to come together and try to discuss this problem as the South Sudanese people, not only Nuer and Dinka, because in the beginning they just come out like the tribal problems. But it's not in fact like that, because the government, even the army government, it's not the Dinka army. It's the coalition of the all people of South Sudan. So there is some mistakes happen, which we really wanted to be investigated, and those they have to take accountability of what happens for the people to reconcile and try for forgiveness, and for also the right of people, the innocent people who died and they deserve life. And that's why we established this in South Sudan, to get our independence, to get the freedom of the speech, the rights of life with dignity. So I think the government, those people, these things happened in 1991 and 1996, but also they overcome it and they came together, they signed the peace agreement, and we established this. I think we will do this with the support, with the government, with the rebels, because they have will now to come together and sign peace and this coalition of the new national government that they wanted to form. I think things will work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kuol. We are coming close also to an end slowly, but you still have the opportunity to forward your question. I also have one question. It came out also of one of the voices from the world. Those people who are conversant with all this hashtag business and all this new media, you know, I'm 66, I'm not so well informed about it. But are there any rules of conduct in this world which we can bring to the attention of these people, or these positive addresses we have seen? Are these people also working on some rule of conduct? For instance, I would also include, you know, I'm shocked as a clergyman that in many of these hate speeches, they ask God the Almighty to kill the Dinka. They ask God the Almighty to kill the Nuer. My goodness, on which side shall God fight? I ask myself. Why do these people misuse the name of God all the time? Christians and Muslims. It's the same pattern. I would actually contribute to this rule of conduct. leave God out of this business and don't misuse his holy name. That's just one rule of conduct. But I have to express this because I'm just always bewildered if I see how people misuse religion for their own hate speeches, being they Christian, Muslim, or whatever religion. So I think this was my substantial contribution to this evening. But I wanted also to ask Marina. I'm sure, Marina, you have been so silent. I know you wanted the South Sudanese people to speak, but I'm sure also you should not wind up, but also to make one or the other observation you have now out of this discussion.
Actually, I would like to come back to the beginning, to something Mr. Strässer said, and which also connects to what Chargé d'Affaires just said. You were saying that the government is ready to come to terms. I don't have any doubts about that. But, and this was your question, Mr. Strässer, what kind of solution will it be? And for me, if we discuss especially all this Twitter, Facebook, hashtag stuff, this is a complete elitist approach. And I think this was clear from what also my other panelists here were saying. So ordinary South Sudanese have an opinion, but they don't have a voice in all that. And I think this is where the problem is, because yes, I also agree, it could well be that sooner or later we come to an agreement in Addis or wherever, but will it bring a sustainable solution? And there I have a lot of doubts. And to me, and again, this brings me back to something you were saying in the beginning, Mr. Strässer, about the role of the church. The church, of course, also is in one way or the other always a reflection of what happens in society. So, of course, it's also made of people. But at the same time, the hope of people is on the church. And they are the ones who are everywhere, also on the ground. They can play a very negative role. We should not forget that. They can be part of hate speech. Fortunately enough, it does not happen too often, but it can happen. We shall not deny that, because I think only if we are very, very open, if we really try to look at what is really going on, who is playing which role, who had played which role in the past, all of us, we come to a point where we might be able to help. So to me, and I don't know how you look at it, to me it's of utmost importance that that there is really what you can call a national dialogue or whatever. I don't want to argue about the name of that, but you need a dialogue which starts with the grassroots. And I say it also because we just come back with an EKD delegation from South Sudan. And for the first time ever in 30 years, we were not the first time with a group of women, but for the first time in 30 years, these women told us, we don't know where to get our hope from right now. And this was, to me, was completely, I was really nearly mad, because I never heard it, especially from women, that they say, we don't, at the moment, we are so much traumatized ourselves, we don't know where to get our hope from. But they said, if you people from outside support us and come and visit and help us, let's say, to overcome this shock, this trauma, we also are in the position to go to the grassroots and provide our hopes there. Because again, as it was said here, so many people are illiterate. And if somebody is illiterate, of course, he cannot use Twitter or whatever. So he does not follow. We have an elitist discussion on this. But we need to include the others. And there are ways to do that. There had been this experience of the people-to-people peace process in the past. I'm not saying this is the right model today, but we can learn lessons from that. I just today came across a handbook for reconciliation and dealing with the past, worked out by people from former Yugoslavia. These are things which might be useful in this situation. So we have to look much more widely, but we have to include much more people. So if we only have a elitist solution this time, I'm 100% convinced it will not be a sustainable one. I don't know how my colleagues here on the panel look at this, but this is at least looking from outside, my strong conviction.
I think I hand over to Professor Leben and just answer you, and perhaps this is then also our final statement on this panel. Thank you. Oh no, the world is calling here. You will be next. But first, Professor Leben.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. We in South Sudan can only hope that the ceasefire should hold and we should reach a peace agreement very quickly. I think the problem which happened at the center. It's the ruling party, the split happened there. So there is a need to have some accommodation at the very high level. But to have, as she correctly mentioned, to have a sustainable peace, then we need a lot of work to be done, a lot of work to include other people. And as the issue of illiteracy is very important, because many of the illiterate people are young men who are mobilized to do the fighting. So it is very important that if a peace agreement is reached, then there must be awareness creation, that there must be a way of going down. Of course, it's very important to use the modern technologies, but this do not reach very many people. The people who are far away in the rural areas, young people who are mobilized to do bad things and so on. So there has to be a way of reaching those people with peace messages and so on. And in this situation, and therefore, the role of involving many stakeholders is very vital, particularly when we talk about we need to involve the civil society. Civil society become very important because the civil society, they operate, some of the groups operate at the local level. So you need to involve them, and through them, then they can reach a lot of the marginalized young people who are easily mobilized to get involved maybe in violent activities and so on. So there has to be a means of reaching them. There has to be a means of involving them if at the end of the day we are to have a sustainable peace.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Leben. Stephen, what are the news?
Okay, it's not really news, but it's just my own comment or my own question on this, the comments on the elitism of internet and access to it. What we haven't really touched on this evening is sort of the other side of the problem. So not just hate speech, but it's actually how these social media are being used to actually manipulate action on the ground. So it's not a question about, well, how do people have access to the internet in South Sudan, but it's how individuals and organizations around the world are giving commands to forces on the ground in South Sudan. So you have a connection between different media. You're going from a specific strategic military discussion online that is then phoned in to people on the ground who then take action. So there's those kinds of things also happening, and this is a far more, let's say, real part in the conflict. The hate speech is a fire that really has effect back and forth. We had one gentleman who was following the feed, and I assume that he's in Juba, called David. He says something that a lot of people have been echoing: "I don't feel safe. If I don't shoot, they will." So that's taking, let's say, the spirit of hate online and putting it into your own personal action. But there is this very specific type of military action, which is, I think, not addressed enough when we're talking about peaceful solutions and how to find ways out of the military conflict. And I think that aspect has to also come into the debate.
Thank you, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we at least have learned and heard in a very specific way, talking about South Sudan, in talking about an aspect which actually has to be also talked about, which is the impact of the new social media. And for me, it was quite revealing what impact this social media have. And I think you all agree that also on this very evening, on the eve of the 3rd Independence Day, we wish that through social media also, people do give reconciliation and peace a voice through so many means. Those who are literate through the new media, and those who are illiterate through their own ways of me. I think with this hope and with this aspiration for a good future of the south of Sudan and of many people who defy hate speeches, I would like to close this evening and wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you. And of course, I also would like to thank again my wonderful panelists here, going through with me all these very interesting and important questions. Thank you so much.